Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Gumball. And I'm coming at you with another deck profile. This time it's going to be a lot more in-depth. It's going to be on the new Ice Rider archetype. So, for those who don't know, for 2 water energy, Ice Rider VMAX does 10 damage, and you can discard up to 2 energy attached to it. For each one you do 120 damage. So if you discard 2 water energy, you do 250. Now, comboing this with the new Melanie supporter, which is essentially just Welder for water Vs, you can just swing super hard every single turn. And, I mean, I think the deck's really good. We've been testing this a lot in my team chat. Just making sure that the deck actually functions and, like, what its matchups look like and whatever. So, let's go ahead and get into the deck. So, starting it off, we are running a 3-3 Ice Rider line. Now, there's like 2 different Ice Rider Vs, the baby. We're running the one that does 40 damage for 1 basic water. And then the second attack is just does 200 for 2 water and a colorless, and you discard 2 energy attached to it. The reason that we're running this over the other one is that there is some situation... I don't think the other one has a 1 energy attack. I think it does like 2 energy and it does like 50 and spreads 10 to everything. But you prefer the 40 damage attack because it's only 1 energy. And that 40 damage actually is sometimes relevant for math, so you can, you know, investing 2 energy into an Ice Rider turn 1 going second usually isn't good, because that means you can just get punished and then you lose 2 energy. So you'd rather spread the energy out and just swing into the active with it. And then we are running 4 Jirachi. Yeah, we're running the Jirachi engine for this. So I pretty much base this on the Welder engine. I know that a lot of people in Japan have been playing, like, Inteleon with it, because I know that they don't have Stellar Wish over there. And a lot of people that have been looking at Japanese lists don't know that they don't have Stellar Wish over there. So they've been thinking, okay, let's play like a 3-2-1 Inteleon line or some shit, whatever the hell they play. I don't think it's good. I think it's fucking awful. And I think Stellar Wish is just better. So in addition to those, we are playing 2 Dede and 2 Bat. The reason that we're playing 2 Dede and 2 Bat is because I'm not running any stadiums, so if Plant comes down, we have no way to play, to bump it. So I do want 2 Bat. Otherwise, Dede is just usually better, so I was running a 2 Dede, 1 Bat line, but there's also just times where you want a 4th draw support mon. Usually because you have to discard 1 early, or you prize 1, or you just have to play hyper aggressively the whole game to keep up. So we're also playing 1 Galarian Rapidash V and 1 Cryogonal. Both of these make it a lot better to go second because this deck wants to go first. You want to find an Ice Rider turn 1 and attach a water to it. So turn 2 you can just like manually attach to one of the VMAXs and just start digging. So you don't have to find Melanie. But going second, you can just Frozen Lock your opponent while you're setting up one of the Ice Riders for 1 water energy. This card's honestly really cracked, and it makes so many games a lot easier to win. And then the Rapidash is going to make a lot of your VMAX matchups a lot easier. It also makes Luke Metal winnable without the Phoebe. Because you can just jammer your Rapidash and like swing active, or if they don't have a Goggles, you can just start spreading to whatever they have on the field. But yeah, Librahorn is just a really busted attack. It functions with Melanie. So yeah. And then we are running 1 Galarian Zigzagoon. Here, let me scoot these up real quick. 1 Galarian Zigzagoon, 1 Mewtwo, and 1 Mew. So the we're, as you can probably tell with the Jirachis, we're running nets, just so we can dig a little bit harder with Stellar Wish. But it's also going to make it to where we can use Zig. Zig is going to help you kill tag teams with this guy, because when you're capping out at 250, you don't want to have to use Rapidash like Victini does in order to deal with tag teams. So you can just Zig, net, and then discard 2 energy to do 270. So you're going to be killing Mew3s, you're going to be... Well, you already kill Rashizards. But Pikarom with a big charm to it. 1 Zig Ping is going to let you kill a Raichu and a Alolan Raichu. And then with 2 nets, you can kill an ADP. So that's going to be it for the Pokemon line. The Mew is definitely cuttable. the reason that we're running the Mew is for Urshi, specifically. Because we do run 4 support mons, and we are running a supporter mon heavy engine. So we don't want to get bodied by Urshi, but I don't know how relevant Urshi is going to be in the new meta. So this card's definitely cuttable. Unfortunately, because we don't know what exactly is going to be played and what's going to be good, we had to basically base this list around the current meta, which I know that sounds really bad. But keep in mind that every new set, when we think there's going to be a bunch of new decks, there's usually not. There's only 1 or 2. So, if need be, we can cut the Mew. I don't think we need it for comm math, but I believe we have 18 mons right here. 6, 10, 16. No, we have 19. We have 19 total mons right here, so we can definitely cut the Mew, and it doesn't really hurt our Pokemon communication math. Moving on to supporters, we are running 4 Melanie. Like I said, this card's basically the water for Weldermons. If you don't know what this card does, you attach a water energy from discard to one of your Pokemon V, and then you draw 3 cards. So not quite as powerful as Welder, but it does work from discard, so you don't need to have the energy in hand, which is really good. Unfortunately, because it is only to Vs, we can't play some cool techs like the Piplup Blastoise, which we might run in order to be able to beat Zamazenta. And it also just puts energy onto the board. It'll also give us a GX attack. Just good stuff like that. Not being able to do it to any Pokemon is also the reason we don't run Articuno, because I know they've been running Articuno over in Japan. And we were initially running Articuno before we realized that it just sucks and that Cryogonal's better. Now, we are also running 2 Boss. We can afford to get away with running 2, unlike Welder decks, because we're not as reliant on our supporter, our acceleration supporter, in order to, you know, play the game. It's kind of like Victini, where once you have the 2 manual attachments, you can go going. But unlike Victini, because you do need to discard your energy, you do still need to rely on it to a certain extent. But because we can't just get by there on manual attachments, you are also running 1 research. It's just really good to have a discard draw 7 supporter. There's not really much else to say about that, so I'll just move on. We are also running onto our items 4 Quick Ball, obviously. This is like the most important card in Standard. Without it, you don't have access to like 90% of your engine. 4 Switch, as any Jirachi engine should run. 4 Scoop Up Net. This is going to help you, you know, use your Stellar Wishes multiple times. It's going to get you your Jirachis set up, reuse your Ziggs. Reuse Mewtwo, scoop up Cryogonal or Mew if you don't want it on the board. Scoop Up Net's just good. We are also running 3 Pokemon Communication. We don't run the full 4 because there's not space, but also it's not useful to run 4. Like, the problem with Communication is that you don't always have a Pokemon in your hand to use it with. And when you do, a lot of times you do want it on the board. Like, if I need to draw cards, I'm not going to communicate back a Dedenne for a Nice Rider VMAX unless I have 2 Dedennes in hand, right? And there have definitely been games where I've started like 1 or 2 communications in hand but no Pokemon. So adding a 4th one wouldn't really help. It would be more so like just adding more Pokemon to make these more consistent. So other than that, we are also running 2 Pokegear and 2 Bucket. So the 2 gear is going to let you find your Melanies, find your bosses, and find your research. So before we were running 2 gear, we were running 3 research, and it was fine. It was nice having the draw support, but it felt bad for some reason, and then I figured it out. It was just that we should have been running gear. Because gear is a card we can find off Stellar Wish to like dig even harder for that boss or a Melanie. It's a card we can burn for bat. And it functions with Mewtwo without having to actually draw cards to, you know, use Mewtwo. And then the 2 Bucket is just going to find our water energy. It's kind of like Hearth in the sense that it's a Stellar Wish out into energy. And then onto our one-off items, we are running 1 Great Catcher, 1 Escape Rope, and 1 Stamp. So, the 1 Stamp, kind of like in Urshi, when you have access to Stellar Wish, you can afford to just run 1 Stamp. It's not like Welder where you're gonna dig through your entire deck and like discard everything, but you do it enough to where you don't really want to warrant 2 stamp. Plus, this deck is hyper aggressive enough to where you shouldn't need a second stamp. Stamp is more of a luxury card in my opinion. The Escape Rope is like a soft gust pretty much. It's also a 5th switch option, so you're gonna be able to get your Jirachi in and out. You can Escape Rope for game a lot more than often than not. Like, if your opponent promoted something that you can't kill with Ice Rider, you can rope around it after, like, Melanie or researching. And then, same with Great Catcher. Great Catcher is just going to be an item gust, which is super huge. You can use it to close games. You can use it to bring up something like a Mew3 early or a Pikarom early if your opponent just, like, bolt onto it. And then, we're only running one tool, and it is one tool Jammer. We are running no stadiums in this deck. I was running one swell, but I question the validity of it because we don't know how good Path to the Peak is going to be. As far as we can tell, the only decks that are actually going to play Path to the Peak are going to be Green's decks. And Green's decks are not very good. And even if they do play Path to the Peak, we do have the whole Stellar Wish engine, and Green's decks tend to be slow. So that's not really a big issue, but if it is, we can just flip the Mew for a Marshadow or something, or put the one swell back in. Like I said, I don't think there's a need for any stadiums. You could run like a Viridian or a Training Court, which we were discussing. We were also discussing Wonder Lab, but all of those just felt really bad. Like, I would rather have Bucket than Viridian because I don't want to give my opponent an out to their energy. Same with Training Court. I don't really want to give my opponent an out to their energy, and usually I only have enough water in discard to use Melanie, not really to get back from discard, except later in the game when I don't need it, and whenever my opponent more likely does. The one swell, like I said, it felt kind of useless. Like, a lot of decks in format are currently running swell, except for, I guess, Luke Metal right now is running one plant, which is fine, and Hearth decks, which we're a water deck, we shouldn't have trouble with that. So, the validity of swell is purely based on how good Path to the Peak is actually going to be. So I don't think there's a need for any stadiums. Like I said, if we wanted to, we can just flip the Mew for a Marshadow if we really need it. Anyways, to close out, this deck is going to be our energy, which is going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. You can't really see that. Let me scoot that in a little bit more. 11 water energy. This feels like a perfect count, pretty much. I don't know. I mean, I might up it to 12. You can go down to 10, you can go up to 12, but I think 11 is just a good number. I think you find them often enough, you hardly ever whiff between the buckets and just having a lot of energy and a lot of draw options. The only comments that I really have on this deck are that this list feels really good. This list feels like a almost perfect base. I don't think there's anything else I would really want to run in this. Other than, like I said, like the Swell, the Marshadow, stuff like that. And those changes are based on how good some of the other meta decks are going to be. Like, also a Phoebe in here. We were initially running Phoebe in the very first 60 we had built, but we cut it because we were like, okay, we don't know how strong Desi, Altaria, or Luke Metal is going to be. If any of those decks become, like, tier 1 relevancy, then we just cut our card and put Phoebe in. If we really want to beat Luke Metal, we can just put in a second Jammer to shut off Goggles. That helps that matchup a lot more than you think it does. We could also just add a second Rapidash, depending on how some matchups look. Again, a lot of what we had to do is build on speculation. So we can only test what we know is already good and what will continue to stay good. Like, ADP, we know is going to stay good. Shadow Rider, we know is going to be playable. It's going to be played at first. Urshi, we know Urshi's going to be good. So, testing against those decks, we have to speculate to a degree. But I'm very satisfied with how this list turned out. It runs really nice. It runs like a Welder deck, but I don't even want to say slightly better. It just runs like a Welder deck. So if you like Welder decks, play this. Now, if you're concerned about the fact that this is just worse Victini, my argument to that is that Ice Rider has better tag team matchups, so things like Krace that are gonna put down the Reshizar, like anything that runs fire is gonna struggle against this. Victini itself is gonna struggle against this. Anything that's super item reliant, we can just set up on with Cryogonal. And, you know, it feels super strong in its own right. So yeah, that's about it. Peace.